He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to the Marlow Show. Big show here. John Carney will be here in a minute, which is really important because it's a big jobs day and it's a complicated and not good jobs report. We'll give you all the details, all the nuance, some hope, some silver linings, but really, I think, a sort of extraordinary explanation of how we got these numbers. That's all to come. Then I will monologue and I will cover Bill Gates at the White House, which I'm not happy about. Plus, I got a palate cleansing Rosie clip that you're going to enjoy, plus some other news, gun bans for trans. All that stuff comes up in the show. But first, I want to tell you about wonderful partners and sponsor of the show, the International Fellowship for Christians and Jews. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to experience God's favor in extraordinary ways? There's a secret hiding in plain sight throughout Scripture. God has designed a pathway to blessing that runs directly through our relationship with Israel. It's not complicated. It's not mysterious. It's actually beautifully simple. A promise found in Genesis 12. God said, I will bless those who bless you. The holy equation has been working for 4,000 years, from Abraham's time to today. God rewards those who align their hearts with his heart for Israel. It's like stepping into a river of blessing that's been flowing from the beginning. When I support the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, I'm not just giving charity, I'm plugging into God's ancient blessing system. I'm choosing to flow with his plan instead of against it. And the results speak for themselves. Lives transformed, families blessed, purposes fulfilled. As Christians, we believe we've been grafted into God's family tree. Let's discover what it means to be united with his chosen people through faith. To learn more, you go to ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org. Let's bring in John Carney. All right, this is the Alex Marlow Show, and I am glad you're here. It's not an Alex and Friends episode today. I will do some monologuing on the back half of the show, but I'm going to mix it up because the biggest news story is jobs data, and we have John Carney, and it is a long series of dominoes to get John on the show today. I'll tell you, my original plan, my Breitbart Confidential show, which for our premium members at Breitbart News, was to talk to Winton Hall today about AI, but then the jobs numbers came in and they were so wild that I want to talk to Carney, and then I cannot organize to get that show going. So you guys are getting Carney, which is a big treat. And so we're going to do it right off the top of the show. So instead of me translating what Carney thinks back to you, as I would normally do on a Jobs Friday when John's not here, we're getting John himself. And by the way, on this show, I wanted to have John Binder on to talk about immigration and Giorgio Armani. And that didn't work out either because one of my children barfed when I was supposed to be recording with him, which is, but that's a pretty high batting average. That can't be enough to get someone to not do the show because one of my kids is barfing most of the time. So because of all those series of events, we are now having Hawaiian Shirt Friday with the one and only John Carney, the most knowledgeable man, I would say, on Maganomics in the world. The Breitbart Business Digest is his baby. You should read that every day. Subscribe at Breitbart.com. John, thank you for bearing with me and indulging me. I'm sure you've some thoughts on my intro.
Oh, I have to say, I remember the days of when, which kid would puke. It was never a question of whether there would be puking kids, just which one will be puking today. Yeah, exactly. So I was commenting this morning about how I would occasionally joke with Mrs. Dr. Marlow that, hey, it's 7:45 a.m. and no one's puked yet. And routinely someone will puke within the next 10 minutes. It just does happen just the way it is. It's also that back to school season where the kids get reintroduced to the massive germ pool that are schools. I already had one kid. I've had, I don't know, they've been back like a week and a half. And my kids have been sick twice, so that's the way it goes. And another part of my strange morning I'm having is that one of my children hid my phone and I could not find it because my phone was on. I had it with the volume on, and late last night I turned off the volume and back to vibrate mode because one of my WhatsApp chat groups was just too active, and so I had to turn that off. Blowing up, yeah, and so I had to turn that off, and so thus I couldn't find it, and then it was vibrating, but it was under. So John, you'll appreciate this. I got Master Marlowe the Chronicles of Narnia box set. Nice. And so we're digging into it.
And so he's got all the books out. So he used the box and hid the phone in the box. So that's where it was. And
it was literally in a wardrobe.
It was in the wardrobe. It was exactly in the slot where Lion the Witch and the wardrobe would be. So anyway, the John has great recommendations for children's literature, but we got some serious stuff today because jobs report was pretty stinky. It smelled and it was bad. And there's a lot of interesting conclusions that we discussed on our editorial call at Breitbart that I want to get to. But first, let's set up what was in this jobs report for the month of August, but also the revisions. So walk us through it.
Right. So the jobs report came in with just 22,000 jobs being added for the month of August. That is very low. And there was a downward, actually the July number got revised up a tiny bit, but the big striking thing was a downward revision to the June number, which is now negative, meaning we lost jobs in June. So the total number of people working in the United States contracted in June. That hasn't happened since the pandemic. We've been adding jobs month after month after month since the pandemic. It's bad news that we had that month's contraction. It's pretty bad news that we also didn't pick up on the contraction until later, right? Like that would be something that would have been nice to know back in June because the Federal Reserve may have changed its policy. It may have been cutting interest rates, but instead we didn't find out that we actually contracted till 2 months later because frankly, the Bureau of Labor Statistics that puts out these reports has a problem getting good statistics in. There's all sorts of reasons and we could go into that. But the main takeaway is jobs numbers were weaker than expected. The downward revision was very bad. It shows that the labor market is not in a strong place. It's not an absolute catastrophe. I mean, the unemployment rate is still 4.3%, which is very low, but we're not creating enough jobs to keep up with the growth of the labor force every month. If you're creating just 22,000 jobs, you will inevitably month after month start to increase the unemployment rate every month because you're just not creating enough jobs for people.
All right, I got about a half a dozen follow-up questions, but let's just take them one at a time. The first one is, this was not expected, correct?
Right, that's right. The economists had projected around 75,000 jobs, which was around what the number was for the month before. I'll tell you a little secret. Some economists, I'm convinced, just project that will have around what the last month's job is the next month. It's not a terrible way of predicting things. How do we know the sun goes up every day? Well, because it's gone up every day for the past billion years. In the same way, if you predict that the past repeats itself, you're kind of going to be right. And so when, the reason why the prediction this month was around 75,000 is because that's what it was the prior month. And people thought, this month, August looked a lot like July. Turns out that seems to have been wrong. At least in the initial read, it was a lot weaker.
Okay, so why do you think the revisions took place at such a low level, considering that Trump cheats on all the data and cooks it? We learned that from the establishment media last couple months.
Right, exactly. When Trump last month fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is like the statistical bureau that puts out this stuff, traditionally run by an economist, but that person actually doesn't do the work. It's not like the head of the BLS is sitting there with like a pencil and an eraser and a, high-powered calculator, typing in the numbers and doing the calculations. It's actually done by a big staff at the BLS. So the head doesn't do that much, but they probably should have been doing more than they were doing, because what we've had is some very bad revisions. When Trump replaced that person, a lot of liberals started to say, well, maybe we'll get really good jobs numbers now and we won't be able to trust them because Trump's going to cook the books, right? That never really made sense because, as I just said, it's not really the head of the agency that does the actual calculation. But of course, Trump derangement syndrome means no theory of Trump doing bad stuff will be rejected by the left. Anything you can come up with, you could say Trump's going to just, order, the BLS to say 1 million jobs were created. They'll believe it. This number shows pretty decisively that Trump is not trying to cook the books. The BLS put out a number that is really bad.
Okay, so let's talk about what sectors of the economy we think were hardest hit, which ones are concerning to you. We can't get to all of them probably, but run down the most interesting takeaways from various sectors.
Sure. First one, kind of silver lining, the federal government employment continues to shrink. Government employment is down something like 97,000 jobs since Donald Trump took office, since January. That's great. That hasn't happened for a long time. Getting, month after month of shrinking federal employment is a good thing for the economy. It's a good thing for our country. It's a good thing for human freedom.
Right.
So that's good. However, that does mean when you're shrinking that your jobs numbers are going to come in lower, unless you're making up for it somewhere else. There was also weakness in the financial sector, the IT sector, a thing called professional and business services, all pretty weak. Manufacturing, they all contracted. Manufacturing contracted, construction contracted, mining and oil extraction contracted. Those are all pretty cyclical parts of the economy, meaning if they are going down, that usually means there is a serious slowdown in hiring. Now, and so that's undeniable, right? There has been a slowdown in hiring. We can see it in the numbers. It's not just 1 month's data. The 3-month average right now of jobs being created is 29,000. And if you took out social assistance and healthcare, which are very tied to government spending, the number would be probably 0 for the last 3 months. So weak.
Okay, so in terms of the specific weakness in the economy, how much of that has to do with the Federal Reserve?
So I think most of it. I think what we're seeing in this jobs report and in the previous ones is that the Federal Reserve's monetary policy is inappropriate for the economy today. It's too tight. Interest rates are too high. They're squeezing the economy. This is what the Fed knows happens if it keeps interest rates too high. It starts to contract employment. That's how monetary policy works. And that's what we're seeing. The Fed should have cut, and it's too bad we didn't have better data a couple months ago. The Fed should have been cutting months ago. The market is now locked in a cut in September. So 12 days from now, they will cut. But that's going to be too late. Monetary policy happens with a lag. It doesn't instantly start to rev up the economy. So we're going to have a few rough months in the labor market, probably. On the other hand, the thing that's going to offset that is we have the One Big Beautiful Bill. That will help provide some juice to the economy. So that will help a little bit. The Federal Reserve stuff will take longer. The One Big Beautiful Bill stuff should start to kick in September, October, November.
But this is where I start getting concerned, because it just feels like, as well as Trump is doing, in my opinion, and as well as the MAGA agenda looks, and as great as Scott Bessent is, it just does. There are economic factors that are outside of control of the executive branch of the U.S. government, and even we got the majority in the legislature, and they're doing okay. But it just feels like there's stuff that is beyond our control. And this seems like, yet again, Jerome Powell being too slow. And Trump is so right about this. He should have raised rates quicker when they needed to go up, and then he should have lowered rates quicker when they need to go down. And then now we're here. I mean, and it seems like we're in very shaky ground all of a sudden.
Yeah. So Jerome Powell has been almost perpetually too late. As you were saying, he was too late so first of all, he was too late when he started raising rates because he thought inflation would be transitory. He then was too late again when it came time to start cutting rates again. I think he has a perpetual problem where he's always looking at what happened last time around and not ever really having a clear view of what should happen going forward. So one of the reasons he was too late during the pandemic and when Biden came in and inflation started to go through the roof, Powell said, well, we've had many years of low inflation, so that's probably going to happen again. Well, it didn't, and we got super high inflation. Now he says, well, we had super high inflation a couple years ago, and now we have to worry about that. So he's always sort of fighting the last war, not on top of what's happening, behind the curve every time. And here we are again, where we are having, the job market get really crushed right now by high interest rates.
Okay, it's just so. But we have no recourse, right? All we can do is wait, and we'll get a cut next month, and
right,
we know Powell's not going to overcorrect, so it'll probably be 25 basis points, right? I mean, that's what the math is. But maybe we'll get a series of cuts. But walk through your prediction and walk through. Give me if Carney was in charge of the Fed and your prediction.
Sure. So I'll start with the prediction part. I think that the Fed will cut 25 basis points in September. They will then wait to see what happens. I think they will not cut again. There's one more meeting before the end of the year, before the December meeting. I think they may skip that unless they get more bad jobs reports. But I think what they'll want to do is cut and see what happens. I think that's a mistake. I think what they should do, if I were running policies, I'd do a 50 basis point cut in September. So in other words, double the quarter point cut they usually do, 25 basis points.
Is it disturbing that I would too? And, I'm the pinch hitter on an economic newsletter and I edit economic content. So that's my entire qualifications to run the Fed. But I still feel very confident that I'm right and Powell's wrong.
No, I think that is something that is pretty widespread now. People are Powell has lost the confidence not just of the U.S. president, but I think of many of the American people. They don't trust him to be a good manager of the economy. And unfortunately, because of the way our system works, we're stuck with him until next summer. There's no real way to get rid of him unless it turns out he's, like stealing money from the Fed or whatever. It will be very hard to get rid of him. Trump could probably, frankly, legally, Trump could probably demote him from being chairman, but couldn't kick him off the Fed. Demoting him as chairman would be a big political problem. So we're probably stuck with Powell until next summer. Fortunately, it does seem like the Fed is going to cut. They're going to cut in September. That will help. They should be cutting by more. They should be also clarifying that they recognize that the risk is now the economy is slowing down too much and the labor market really running into trouble. And so they should indicate that they're going to cut not just in September, but just make it clear that it's going to be the September meeting, the October meeting, the December meeting, that the cuts are coming, that there's not going to be some sort of big delay. Earlier this month, the market was pricing in like one cut before the end of the year. I think most people think that's off the table. We're going to get at least 2, probably 3.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so that's good. And so that could be a positive. Now let's talk about the political implications of this, because a lot of people are going to blame Trump and they're going to blame the tariffs. And from what I'm to understand, I mean, that's not totally false to blame the tariffs, just because even though the tariffs are going great, I think they're going better than people expected. I'll tell you, Carney, there's no one more bullish on the tariffs than I was. A very public advocate for all the tariffs, stuck a lot of our reputation, credibility, Breitbart on the tariffs. And they're even exceeding my expectations in terms of the lack of inflation and the addition to our treasury that is in the offing right now. But that said, not everyone is going to have come around to that viewpoint necessarily yet. So where do the tariffs work in?
Yeah, so the main effect of the tariffs, as you said, they have not produced inflation. The revenue that they've produced is much higher than anybody expected. The main effect actually has been probably scaring the Fed. Jerome Powell and the economists at the Federal Reserve and many of the top officials hate tariffs. They were convinced that we would get a big inflationary effect from the tariffs. That hasn't happened. And unfortunately, because they are so convinced that we're going to get the big inflationary effect, they're almost immune to the evidence that we're not getting it. Whenever it doesn't happen, they say, well, that just means it hasn't hit yet and it's still to come. And that's a reason to hold off on lowering interest rates. So yes, the tariffs are having an effect, not directly, but through the channel of dissuading the Fed from lowering interest rates.
Interesting. Okay, so let's just speak again, and we'll come back. We can round out the jobs conversation, but let's just for a minute consider how there's no inflation from tariffs, which is, I thought there'd be very little, but Carney, it's shockingly zero.
Yes. So actually, the Council of Economic Advisors, which is run by Stephen Myron, who's Trump is recently trying to elevate to the Federal Reserve,
right?
They put out a report that said it's actually goods inflation is lower than that's what's going to get hit by tariffs is goods. Goods inflation is lower than what you would expect just based on what's going on in the rest of the world. In other words, the rest of the world actually is experiencing higher goods inflation without their tariffs. So that tells us we're really getting basically no tariffs at all from or no inflation at all from the tariffs. You can see that in like the durable goods numbers. It's just not coming through. So you see some prices went up. If you look at like toy prices last month, that went up, furniture prices, sure. But in the aggregate, when you add these things together, there's not an inflationary effect.
Interesting. Okay. So it's just so amazing that worked out. It just proves so many smart people wrong. I hope Trump is keeping track for whoever he elevates next, because there's just so many super smart people who are super wealthy and know way more about the economy than I do. And I don't know, maybe there's someone out there who knows more than you, Carney. I haven't met him, but maybe. And so many people are so wrong on that.
I'm sure there are plenty.
Okay, the last place where I want to take the conversation is one that I think is going to be the first of many, many, many conversations here. But looking at some of these sectors that did not do well, we're talking IT, we're talking business services. It just feels to me that there's a element here of, dare I say, AI. And I think we could be optimistic about AI for a lot of reasons. I think medium, long term, I don't know I've necessarily bought that the AI is going to destroy the jobs market the same way that manufacturing and automation and any robotics that we have, sometimes that creates more jobs than it cuts. We don't really know. You can take your best guess here. Obviously, the AI, it feels like, considering that a lot of the people like Sam Altman, who are the AI pioneers, also want to experiment with universal basic income, you start seeing stuff like that the AI titans do think that this is going to create a huge displacement in the jobs market and perhaps a huge net cut in jobs. But you can't help but think at the moment we're seeing this rapid advance of AI, and I've never seen anything like this. It just, the rapid nature of how it's expanding, it feels like overnight, is just all around us. And then we see this particular set of jobs data. You can't help but think that maybe this is the first bad AI jobs report.
I think there is something to that. When you look at the areas that lost jobs, particularly, as you were saying, business services, IT, finance, these are areas where I don't think have been a lot of AI layoffs, but I think there's been a dramatic slowdown in AI hiring. And so, I mean, not AI hiring, but in hiring because of AI. Meaning, if a lot of your entry level jobs in a lot of these kind of businesses probably can be handled not totally by AI, but instead of hiring 5 people to do some like basic data entry or to do some basic data analysis, you can hire 1 person and have AI do the job of the other 4. So and I think that we're probably going to see that. I don't think that is likely to result in a permanent, this vision of like workless future where people can't have jobs and we have to provide them with subsidized income.
Yeah.
That's been the prediction that's happened many, many times throughout history, right? Like, oh, the machine, the Luddites destroyed the machines.
Yeah.
In fact, what we end up doing is finding new uses for human labor, because human labor is the most valuable thing in the entire world. And so we will find uses for human labor. We might not know what they are, just like people who were running looms by hand and, making all of the things that everybody wore by hand, felt like, well, what will happen to all those people when machines are, putting cotton together or stringing together sweaters? Well, we found better and more efficient uses for people working, and I think we're going to do that. But that doesn't mean there will not be a period of displacement, and it's particularly troubling because it seems to be where that's going to hit is going to be a lot of entry-level jobs.
Right, of course. No, exactly. And I've given this example, and I'll keep giving this example, that when I was researching Breaking Biden, I hired 5 researchers and just to cover a ton of ground. And these are not super high level jobs. There's like a 1 research manager and 4 junior researchers. And then for Breaking the Law, I only had to hire 1 because it's just so much easier to research with the AI stuff. And then the AI doesn't write for you. I write all my own books. But when you're trying to answer a simple question like, well, what happened in this case? Like, what's a summary of this case from, from 40 years ago, so I can make 1 citation? The process would be that I got to find which one of the researchers would do it, assign it to them. They take 2 or 3 days on it. They bring it back, show it to the senior researcher. Then you show it to me. Like, I don't have to do any of that anymore. It's just it's either me or Jacob, my right-hand guy. We look it up in 2 minutes. And that is jobs that are going to be lost because of that. And it may be long-term. And maybe it's a 50-50 shot long-term. It turns out that human labor catches up in some other ways. But if you don't think that there's going to be massive disruption, and maybe we're already seeing it, like it could be happening.
It's also a problem for businesses because while you might say, well, we don't really need all those junior people. Well, guess what? The junior people eventually become the mid-level people who you need to have these skills. Right. And if you your book example is a good one. If none of the junior researchers can get hired, what happens? They
don't become senior researchers.
Right. They don't become senior researchers, and there's nobody to check the AI anymore. So you don't have there's a big risk that we will end up with this kind of labor skills gap, not tomorrow, not next year, but 10 years from now, where we haven't employed enough junior people in the beginning stages to be able to do the things that we want done later. Forward-thinking businesses will start to think about that. They will say, okay, even if there's some redundancy here, we need to make sure we bring people on to make sure they get skilled up in order to be able to run things in the future. Even if AI could do some of the work they're doing, we need to make sure that we have enough people for the mid-level jobs that AI, because look, you can ask AI, just to use your example, you could ask AI, look up that case. In my experience, 60% of the time, AI gets something about that thing wrong.
Sure.
And so you need to have somebody who can be like.
But again, that's a senior person. So for me, I would check stuff with a senior lawyer who works in the Senate Judiciary, or I would check with Joel Pollack, a double Harvard-trained lawyer who works at Breitbart. And that's how I would check it. Like, that was my fact-checking process, is that either me or junior researcher and then super trained attorney. It was not the junior researcher who would then be learning the ropes on how to become a senior researcher.
Right. And so and that exactly points to the problem is if we're not training the juniors to become the seniors, we'll end up with a gap when the senior people start to retire. What do you do? And I think that's a serious danger. I know, look, there will always be some kind of jobs. The AI can't replace everything. I know people have seen Optimus, the Elon Musk robot, but we're a long ways from having a robot be able to fix your car. We're still going to need auto mechanics, but jobs like researchers, jobs like data compiling, a lot of that can be done with AI. Even I was talking to a business guy who I know who runs part of his operation, has a call center. Something goes wrong with the product. Now, he's not getting rid of people in the call center who answer the phone, because he says people hate talking to the robots. Like, they tried it and it was like instantly turned off customers. But what's happened is AI has allowed them to solve the problems so much quicker, because now the guys at the call center answer it, like type it into an AI thing, and they get the answer much quicker than when they used to have to like flip through a book to find the right answer to the problem, or get somebody else doing it. That he's now actually has fewer people working for him in the call center because AI is doing the job so much more efficiently. So yeah, we are going to see that pressure in a lot of parts of the economy.
Yeah. And so it's going to be a balance, and it's impossible to predict how it's going to work out, but there's going to be a lot of benefits. There's going to be a lot of negatives. And when you see a jobs report like this, then it's it's hard to know for sure what's going to net out in the end. Carney, this is my last question, and it's one I ask with a certain amount of fear. Are there any silver linings in this jobs report?
There are silver linings. The number one is, if you look at what's happened to the number of foreign workers over the last 2 years in the labor force, we've had a 180-degree change, where in the last year of Biden, we added like 2 million foreign workers to the labor force, which kept down wages, which was not good for workers. It's actually reversed. Since the beginning of the year, we're down about 1 million workers, foreign workers. That is one of the reasons that the wage number for what the government calls production and non-supervisory workers, just think of that as like working class people, that's actually up. It rose 0.4% in August. That's a very strong gain. It means that wages are beating inflation and have been since the beginning of the year. And a big part of that is that employers can no longer rely on cheap foreign labor.
Very good. And we like that. We definitely like that, especially with the context of some of the H-1B discussion that's happening, where they're just trying to continue to cement into America's culture just more, importing as many people to compete with Americans as possible. The big tech guys, they were at the White House. That's what they're asking for. They love it. All right, John, fantastic. We can do another hour, but I think that's a good chunk for now. John writes the Breitbart Business Digest for us at Breitbart News. It is fantastic. If you are not subscribing, you're missing out on a lot of the essentials, not just the deep dive nerdy stuff, the essentials of how to understand the economy. And that's it. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. We'll take a quick break. I'll break down some of the news when we come back. Always great stuff from Carney. Very informative and essential, because there's so much noise, particularly out of Washington, which is, I guess, where I want to begin for my solo portion of the show today. Mitch McConnell was saying there are certain similarities right now to the 1930s. He's trashing Trump, saying what a bad guy Trump is and how dangerous Trump is making things. But, his main thing isn't, fascism. It's tariffs. That's what the establishment in Washington can't get their mind around, is that these tariffs, which are working, bring money in the Treasury at a super rapid rate and resetting the global order. And I think a lot of them, these guys, particularly Republicans, is going to be a bigger issue for Republicans, because they're so committed to this issue. It's like a religious doctrine that tariffs is the way. Tariffs is the only way forward. They are having to rethink a lot of stuff right now. And so pay attention to people in your life who are so deeply committed to tariffs and how they're reacting, how they're coping with the fact that tariffs are causing less inflation and are bringing in more to the Treasury than even the tariffs' biggest proponents believed. Okay, so I want to get into something that's not super positive here. That is a Trump meeting with these AI tech CEOs yesterday, and he's got to do it. I want to give you some of the flavor, though, of this. This is Google CEO Sundar Pichai, for example.
Appreciate that your administration had a constructive dialogue, and we were able to get it to some of resolution. I would echo what Sergey said. I think the AI moment is one of the most transformative moments any of us have ever seen or will see in our lifetimes. So making sure the U.S. is at the forefront, and I think your administration is investing a lot. already the AI action plan under your leadership, I think, is a great start, and we look forward to working together, and thanks for your leadership.
Great job you're doing. Incredible, really, job.
So Trump is seated next to Melania. Always great to see Melania. It just always makes me happy. Always puts a smile on my face to see Melania. And he parked Melania next to Bill Gates. So I'm sure Bill had a hard time keeping his hands off her. But he did, I guess, as far as I could tell. And more on that in a moment. But put a pin in that Bill Gates is right there next to Trump and Melania. Obviously, that is intentional. But the Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, one of the worst figures in Silicon Valley, someone who has worked overtime to try to make sure Trump did not rise to the status that he has as president of the United States. And he's there. We got one more clip. This is from Sam Altman, who's the OpenAI ChatGPT guy, the new, probably the newest, I guess, titan in the tech space, and forging some sort of relationship with Trump. Listen to him speak for a second.
First of all, to echo the comments of Tim and others, thank you so much for getting us all together, and thank you for being such a pro-business, pro-innovation president. It's a very refreshing change. We're very excited to see what you're doing to make all of our companies and our entire country so successful. The investment that's happening here, the ability to get the power in the industry back in the United States, I think this will set us up for a long period of great success leading the world, and I don't think that would be happening now without your leadership.
Remember, this is the guy who believed that we're headed towards universal basic income because AI is going to destroy all these jobs. So we're in a very tricky situation. There's a lot of sharks in the water. And when you see the optics of this image that you see, there's one guy off to the side. I think it's one of these tech gurus who's like 21 years old, who Zuckerberg paid the $100 million to get his AI tech. And we're in very risky territory here. And I trust Donald Trump to navigate it more than anyone. But you have to keep your friends close with your enemies closer. But these guys are not good guys. And Bill Gates being right there is clear evidence of that. Bill Gates there's no other way to spin it. Bill Gates is not really a part of Microsoft. He's the vaccine guy at this point. I don't even think he retains a ceremonial title at Microsoft at this time. And Trump parks him right up there and needs some nice things to say about him. But exchanging the pleasantries, Trump always does this. Trump likes getting hotshots in the room with him and holding court in front of them and commanding that room. And it's exciting to him. It's fun for him. He loves it. And so I'm not doubting that entirely, because that's who Trump is, and that's never going to change. But you got to be we got to be cautious here with a guy like Bill Gates. There's nothing nice to say about Bill Gates. It is, if you look at just his whole background, was that he was a monopolist, a ultimate monopolist with Microsoft. And then he started to win over the left by converting to this vaccine industry and being a part of that. This was in the late 90s when he started to do this. And he had a lot of help from Dr. Fauci to do this. And he has done one creepy thing after the next over the past several decades, providing funds for all sorts of woke left-wing causes. He, of course, had a relationship with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and that have involved around his global health investment fund. So using using vaccines to be able to prey on people around the world. Not to say that Gates did it, has been convicted of anything, but certainly he's been accused by subordinates of being undermining, I would say, proper behavior, shall we say, with women. But he was turning mosquitoes into flying syringes to deliver vaccines. Recall that. It's just one creepy thing after the next. He thinks that we should be all eating synthetic beef, of course. He thinks that we don't need to be eating beef. He wants to take that away from us. Rich countries should be eating 100% synthetic beef. No, we should not. He's a climate change freak. He's a vaccine freak. He called for a new religion to guide humanity in the age of AI. And so I don't like seeing him up there. Bannon was on a rant saying he should be in jail. I mean, I don't know what he did illegal, but he's certainly not a guy you want to see up there, President Trump. And that is not what I voted for. But I know Trump, and I know that he does these things. He brings he brings the big, powerful people close. He tries to forge a relationship with them. He feels like that's better. But he says AI is going to replace human doctors, teachers, and most other professions. Bill Gates says AI will replace human doctors, teachers, and most other professions. Sam Altman's there. He's the one who thinks we're going to be on universal basic income. And I say this right after I get off with Carney, and I'm saying, are we already here? Are we already in the AI jobs dearth mode? Has it happened? Given these latest jobs numbers that we just discussed, Are we here where AI is now taking more jobs than it's adding? We got to give it a bit of a grace period because there are adjustments that are made. Companies have to recalibrate at a pretty quick rate. They're probably not going to launch new expansions into certain things when they might have a new updated AI algorithm that could solve workflow issues in the next 2 months or 3 months, whenever the next update comes through from one of these big the AIs that they're already using. So maybe after a few months lag, maybe things normalize. I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that we are seeing the president surrounded by a bunch of bad guys who don't have his interest or our interest at heart. At the moment, we're getting this horrific jobs report. We're getting an unbelievably bad jobs report. And then you got the guy who was the biggest pusher of the COVID vaccine. Right at the same time, Robert Kennedy is fending off Democrats left and right, torching him because he's trying to reset our thinking on vaccines so that there's more science, more sanity, and less politicization. And then you have a political actor like Bill Gates up there with the president, photograph, videos, whatever. It's off-putting. It just is. Now, I don't want to go – I'm not one of these strident hosts who's just going to yell that everything's horrible now. I don't believe that. I'm not black-pilled in that way. And I've seen Trump operate in these environments in the past. But I'm just putting a note in it. We've got to have a note of caution here that this could potentially be bad. Could be bad stuff. Okay, good. So, but that's important to say. It's important to say you got to get it out there because we're winning by so much. We're just – running up the score, it's such an unbelievable level. I don't want to see us lose ground unnecessarily by focusing on the wrong issues and by making the wrong friends, people who are going to stab us in the back. So focusing on the wrong issues, stuff like, that's how the Epstein stuff is looking right now. And I understand that we were promised more than we got. It was mishandled a messaging standpoint. But Trump is trying to shut it down because he does believe he's giving the left what it wants by trying to focus on Epstein. So, and it's a real thing that it's how much time we're going to put into it. You put a little more, it's fine. I understand it. It's some people's number one issue. That holding accountable the people who are part of some sort of global, pedophile ring. But the more we learn, the more we know we're not going to learn everything. And so we got to make sure that we don't step in traps when we could be doing stuff like securing the border, deportations, law and order, no foreign wars, but mix in a few strategic strikes to take out some of the bad guys. All that stuff is such strong footing. We got Alligator Alcatraz coming back. It's going to stay open while the appeals process is happening. That's good news. What else did we get? We got Trump's border policy shifts labor force away from foreign workers. So we're moving the jobs market towards Americans. That is America first. It's amazing. So that is Trump has signed executive order changing Department of the Defense to Department of War. It's kind of cool. So we got all these great things that are happening. You can almost not report them all quickly enough. I just want to make sure that we are staying on that strong footing while we got the Democrats on the run and when we got them on their back foot. This is where the Democrats are at right now. This is Abilio James Acosta, formerly known as Jim Acosta, on his podcast with the one and only Rosie O'Donnell. Keep this.
One person standing in the way of us all figuring out why his name appears multiple times in the Epstein files. We still don't know why his name appears multiple times in the Epstein files.
We do know why, Jim.
Trump.
We all know why.
Yeah.
You have to know why.
Okay, first of all, if you're not watching this, they look identical. If Rosie had just trimmed her hair a little bit and a little bronzer and she's there, they look almost exactly the same. It is just amazing. Does Acosta know this, that they look almost the same here? Because it's not a compliment for Acosta. He's a good looking guy, I guess. I mean, to get on TV, you got to be decent looking for the most part. Not a lot of bad looking people on TV. There's a couple. I can think of a couple, but not a lot. But now he looks just like Rosie. All right.
Why else do you think he paid $1 billion to Jeffrey Epstein over the time of their friendship? $1 billion. He wrote in his...
It's just not true. He didn't pay $1 billion to Jeffrey Epstein. And she said to retract stuff in the past. Remember, she retracted something this week where she said that the trans shooter of the praying children in Minnesota was a MAGA person. So she's had to retract other stuff in the past too. She's just so reckless and wild, and they keep trotting her out there. This is so great. This is where Acosta's a dummy. The smart people on the left, and there's very few of them anymore, but they got to be praying for her to be quiet, right? Because she's creating such amazing content for us, people in conservative talk radio. It's such a great palate cleanser when I can say, well, I got some bad news here. Bill Gates is at the White House and Sundar Pichai's there. The guy who cut off Breitbart ahead of the 2020 election, helped Joe Biden win. Yeah, he's there at the White House. Trump's praising him. So I can do a palate cleanser with a Rosie thing. And so the smart lefty's got to say, well, that's not good. But not Abelio James. He's thinking, you know what? I can get some extra clicks and attention to my podcast if I have her on. And that's what he's doing. So thank you, Jim Acosta.
In his birthday book, here's to all the secrets.
Wonderful secrets.
Yeah. If this was an Angela Lansbury murder she wrote, people would be, it's too obvious.
We figured it out.
Obvious.
Now, Angela Lansbury, the tale as old as time. She's the teacup, right? In Beauty and the Beast. That's my Lansbury. I'm not a murder she wrote guy. I'm a teacups Beauty and the Beast. That is one that's aged very well, I got to say. The Beauty and the Beast was sort of, I thought of it as it's still a top tier Disney, but not that great growing up, maybe because it had the feminine stuff, but it is awesome. The characters in there are amazing. Beast is amazing. Gaston, one of the greatest characters ever. I want my kids to be like Gaston. Sorry, I do. I know it's toxic masculinity, but it's great. All right. Anyway, this is just, it is amazing that they're getting her out there just to say untrue things, because they don't have any actual truth or facts to get Trump with. So now the implication is that Trump paid off Epstein $1 billion because Trump has been a secret pedophile and everyone's kept it secret for 80 years, including the Joe Biden administration, for no good reason. And this is where they're at.
That he is guilty as sin. And America, before he brings more troops into Chicago and harasses brown-skinned people, before he breaks more of the Constitution apart, before he starts having people get killed, we have to do something, America.
Yeah.
And it's
I
time
agree.
for every person with a platform to speak out about it. Every single person, now or never, break glass in time of emergency. It's time to break the glass.
And you saw, Rosie, what he did the other day when those brave women were up on Capitol Hill, the survivors, their families, they were all speaking out. At the same time, Donald Trump is saying it's a Democratic hoax.
So it's the same. This is what I'm saying about Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They were part of it. They were out there playing it up, getting their attention, getting their clicks, getting their photos taken. So it was not good that they helped with that.
How dare he, Jim?
Yeah.
How dare he? For every child that was ever raped by a grown man, how dare he?
How dare you?
Yeah, thank you, Greta. Appreciate it. It's just so ineffectual because she was so tolerant. She didn't care at all. A couple of people, I know Massey sent out a couple of tweets about Epstein during the Biden years. Not a lot. He didn't care this much, but but what was she doing? She didn't care. But do you feel like it's a way to talk about something other than that? Things in Trump world are doing well. And so let's see if they can move off of it and move on to something else. But that is it's a good reminder that we got to keep our eye on the ball. We got to keep focused on stuff in a positive way. And so we got that chance. We still have that chance. A few other news updates that I want to get to in the show. There's talks between Mayor Adams of New York, and Donald Trump, or Trump advisors, to try to get him maybe to become the ambassador to Saudi Arabia, so he will drop out of the mayoral race and save face. Here's the math here, is that the Mamdani is going to win, and he can win with less than half the vote, with the three other people splitting the rest of the vote, Curtis Liwa and Andrew Cuomo being the rest of them. I saw a tweet today from Andrew Cuomo's account where he's having breakfast with the Reverend Al Sharpton. I don't know how that helps expand his map, but Sharpton is disgraced, race baiter, loathed by moderate people. He's an extreme left-wing figure that is probably it turns off parts of the left, considering that he's an open grifter in many ways, because he just really is just there to hoover up money for people to do what? What has he accomplished? Nothing I can think of. So he's worn out his welcome on MSNBC. And remember, I'll always say this. I preferred fat Al Sharpton with the tracksuit. So that was the better version, the skinny Al Sharpton. So he got the stomach staple, right? He didn't get the fat shot, right? He's pre-fat shot. He lost his weight. So, but Cuomo, the guy who's responsible for all those nursing home deaths, who got an Emmy for giving falsehoods on TV about the coronavirus, who was fondling up the Emmy that he won, calling it buxom, preying on the staff. He's not the guy. They don't have the guy. They got to come up with someone else. So it's not the three guys who are up there. So it's going to be Mamdani. He's going to win, and we're going to have an amazing experiment because they're not offering us anything and us meaning sane people, not New Yorkers. New Yorkers, you can decide for yourself. So, all right. But we'll see. We'll keep posted there if there's anything. Tech news. Tesla has offered Elon Musk an unprecedented $1 trillion pay package. Musk is always good about getting himself in the news somehow, and this is how he did it. He's going to drastically increase Tesla's profit margin, which is going to be tough to do because the cars are going out of style because other EVs are catching up to it. Tesla's no resale value, so now as the company's been established for a while, I think people are getting annoyed by that. The left, of course, doesn't like it. I told you I got a neighbor across the street who swapped out their Tesla for a Hyundai EV, which has got to be one of the ugliest cars I've ever seen in my life. And I now have to stare at it whenever I walk outside my house. So I'm upset with Musk for that reason, because I wish I didn't have to stare at that ugly car. Tesla's much better looking than that. Teslas are not great looking cars, but a lot better looking than the Hyundai Ioniq. I think it's Ioniq. Is that what it is? It doesn't matter. All right, so that's out there for you. A controversial take that I had. Not everyone is jiving with me. Is it jiving? Jiving, I think, with me on my take that the gun ban for trans is the win-win. People, trying to explain this. This is a one-move checkmate. We've got a one-move checkmate here with the gun bans for trans. If you put the gun bans for trans, you can get the Democrats on record saying that trans need AR-15s, and perhaps the Supreme Court or a higher court upholds the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, or the trans contagion is officially classified as a mental health condition. And we love the idea. And a lot of you who are not watching the whole clip or listening to the whole show, get in my Instagram comments and you say, shall not be infringed, as if I'm unfamiliar as editor of Breitbart with Second Amendment. Of course, I'm familiar. I know what it says, but we infringe on it all the time. Children can't get the guns. Felons can't get the guns. People who are involuntarily committed for mental health issues, they can't get the guns. So are you telling me that you think that someone who carves off a piece of their forearm and attaches it to the top of their vagina and calls that a penis, you think that that person is of sound mind? It's called a phalloplasty. Look it up, or don't. Really don't look it up. So you're telling me that individual does not classify as too mentally incapacitated to own a firearm, where there are other people who cannot own a firearm for lesser indicators that they're nuts. So you tell me that. And I'll tell you what, if you tell me they still can own the firearm, that's great to me, because I love the Second Amendment and I love gun rights. So that's what I'm saying. It's a win-win. You either get the trans stuff, people carve off the arm and make it a fake penis. That's not a penis. It's just a flap of skin in front of you that you have to walk by the rest of your life while you continue to be depressed because it was a terrible idea. So if you tell me those people are officially nuts in the eyes of the government, because we looked this up, the ATF, we had this, AWR looked this up for us. The ATF lets gun buyers identify as non-binary, male, female, or non-binary. So they are already thinking about this at the government level. So either you tell me that everyone gets the guns, which is great, or you classify the trans stuff as a mental health condition. It's checkmate. So I'm not coming off of this one. This is good. Gun bans for trans, patent pending. We'll get the shirts going if this thing continues. All right, show got some ink. Daily Beast reporting on my interview from earlier in the week with Katie Miller about her love story meeting Stephen Miller. I was hoping the left would hate that, because it's just, Stephen is a very special guy, but I know a lot of special people who are really touched, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion type figures, and they all have normal sides to them. They're all human beings. And we're all in this personal spiritual journey through this life. And in the internet age, we all feel like people are just only characters. I'm a part of it to some degree. I get my characters Breitbart, people I'm never going to get to know, but I have to report on them. Not that I wouldn't get to know them. I'll talk to anyone at any time. I really will. But they really do unperson Stephen more than anyone in the Trump administration. And I love that Katie got to share some of their story on my show. And I knew that would bother them, that it sounds normal. They would hate that he's got a normal life. Doesn't do bath time with the kids, dinner at 5:30. Met his wife at work when they were working on something, and he was kind of a big shot, and he could tutor her on how to be on a radio show. It's great. And I love that. I love that it's got to annoy people on the left who watched it. So it's a nice thing for the show there as well. And I will tease one thing I'm working on, probably be a Saturday or a Sunday story. I'm doing a huge takedown of E. Jean Carroll. I will turn this into show content. If news permits, I'll do it Monday. But I'll tease a lot from Breaking the Law, where one of my favorite chapters of the book is the E. Jean Carroll section, where I basically debunk that whole case. And I've been focused on it a lot in my initial book promo because it's the least consequential of the 6 major cases against Trump. But I'll tell you, it is the most egregious of all the lawfare cases. And she's got a documentary that they're working on. It's going to come out soon. And so I want to get ahead of it. And I got a big article fisking that case. It'll come up at Breitbart. It is not as good as the book. The book chapter is better. But I did want to have that as for those of you who want to have a reference point online. I got that. That's coming up for you as well. I think that's it. I think that's all I want to talk about on today's show. A lot going on. Next week will be cool. I'm filling for Hugh Hewitt a couple times. If you listen to his live show, I'll be doing that. So we'll have some cool podcasts because we'll have the benefit of his resources as well to do a couple of shows there. And as always, Breitbart.com, tons of great stuff happening. Thanks to Misty. Thanks to all of you in the audience. And thanks for listening and watching.